Hello, Nyajong. So I would like to just take this time to thank the viewers for tuning in to watch this amazing panel of these four brave individuals who identify as LGBTQ and plus. So we have Momo Yang. You just say hi, yeah, and Lisa,
Well,
Lisa and Joanne and Lucida to be here to kind of discuss about their journey to finding and living in their truth. So just want to remind everybody, all the viewers, that we are all humans. We make mistakes. We love to love. We love to hate. We love to live and to survive so we can share our own experience and understand that we don't all have to agree with each other, but we all have to appreciate and have an open mind so we could move past our biases. So let's start the panel. Again, thanks again so much for the panel to be joining me today. So let's start with a question. How do you identify yourself? The pronoun or what sexual orientation do you follow? So let's start with Momo.
I'm a gay man, and my pronouns are he and him.
Joanne, you're on mute. You're on mute.
Sorry, start over. I'm Joanne from Minnesota. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I identify as a queer person.
Lucida?
Hello, everyone. My name is Lucida, and I identify myself as transgender woman, and my pronouns are hers, and she.
And Lisa?
Hi y'all, Lisa Estrella Yang here. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I'm a cis woman hailing from Wisconsin.
Cool. So let's start this question for Momo. Can you tell us what being gay mean to you or to the community?
Yeah, so being a gay man to me just means that I am literally just sexually attracted to other men. And I think cisgender gay men are the most privileged within our community. We get to, our expression of ourselves is exactly, for the most part, what you'd expect, for me at least, what you would expect a man to act like, except that I'm attracted to other men as well.
So could you define, like, are you attracted to more feminine type or masculine, or kind of like you love somebody because of their heart or race preference, or how does that affect you being a gay man?
I think when I first came out, I was much more attracted to very masculine men. I think that those aspects of masculinity were things that were very sexy to me. Over time, I think that has changed quite a bit. I think I've started to appreciate different body types, different ideas of what masculinity is. I think a portion of my sexuality is pan. I think a portion of that is due to the fact that I have found myself attracted to smaller men, to younger men sometimes. And it's not necessarily just the outward appearance of how these people are, but also how they themselves express themselves and how they have confidence in who they are. And I see that as something that's probably going to continue to change over time.
So it's kind of shifted to Lisa since you bring up pansexual, Momo. So Lisa, can you tell us a little bit about cissexual, pansexual, and what's the difference between that and bisexual? Like, because a lot these new terminology even to me are like I'm still just trying to discover or understand all the new form of identifying people. So if you could kind of like share light on that.
Yeah, that's a great question. I feel like your question itself also sheds light with the evolving definition. Evolving definition, especially in the LGBTQ plus community. For example, I always knew that I was queer growing up from as young as grade school. I just didn't have a word that best fit the description of how I felt about myself. So the first time I heard the term pansexual was actually in college. Being in such a, though from an immigrant refugee family, being in a privileged place of higher education, being in college. I mean, the fact that that was the first time I heard pansexual, says something about just a lack of term, but the evolving terminology in the community. So to me, I can only speak for myself of what pansexual means to me. It may mean differently for other folks depending on how they relate to it, for their own identity. So first, for like pansexual, you look at the suffix pan versus bi. Pan literally means many. So for me, pansexual means that I'm attracted to many people, and it's outside of the binary gender as well. So cis man, cis woman, outside of that binary. I may be attracted to someone who's trans or non-binary. And when it comes to bisexual, to be honest, I don't know the difference between pansexual and bisexual, because I'm starting to learn as well that there are some folks who identify both, right, and use pansexual and bisexual interchangeably. So yeah, to be honest, I don't know the difference between the two.
Yeah, that's awesome. So Joanne, could you tell us a little bit about the definition of lesbian to you, or if there's another better word to say, what you're.
Well, being a lesbian is being a homosexual woman with the same sex attraction. So me being a girl liking another girl. I really don't like that terminology. I prefer just being under the queer umbrella. I think that I haven't come into terms with what I should label myself, or if I should even label myself.
Do you feel like that's like a generational thing that might be, you still have that sense of like the taboo of labeling that terminology, or?
Not so much, because it's like religion, okay? There's so many types of religion, and I feel like each religion I can relate to, like Christianity, Buddhism. It's the same thing with LGBTQ. I might consider myself bisexual because I've been in a hetero relationship. I could be pansexual because I really don't care what the other person is. They could be a trans woman, trans man. I think it's more being able to relate to them and their personality, the way they are. So I like just being very generic and being labeled as being queer.
And Lucida, could you tell us a little bit about being trans, or what's the definition of trans from your point of view?
Okay, from my point of view, being a transgender person, so let's say biologically I was born a boy, but mentally, emotionally, I feel like a woman. So I transitioned or changed over to the other sex so I could align my, how would I word this? Align my mind with how I physically feel. So now, as you guys can see, I've been through, I had a few cosmetic surgeries. I got, my breast, I'm changing over, transitioning to be more feminine. So basically a transgender person is someone who's biologically born whatever they are, and they are transitioning over to the other sex. Now, this is where it gets confusing because, biologically I was born a boy, but some people still refer to me as I'm gay because I'm a boy and I like boys. But there's a difference between there. To distinguish the difference between a gay man and a transgender woman, because of course we both are attracted to men. So that's where people get confusing. A transgender woman like myself, I'm strictly attracted to straight men. And it's hard sometimes. So
And is there like being trans woman and you're attracted to women? I mean, like, is that a path that you have friends that, in that position, and like, how do you kind of identify or help people understand that? Because a lot of people might be like, then just stay a man. You know what I mean?
Yep, absolutely. I have 3 or 4 other transgender friends that are transgender like myself, and they are attracted to women and men. So, again, from my point of view, when I hang out with them, I call them transmians. Because I don't know what other term to use on them, and to be respectful towards them too.
Yeah.
So I do have some friends that are transgender and also attracted to both sex. Now it also goes, they live their life as how they feel.
Yeah.
So I can't speak from that perspective, but I can speak from my perspective as a transgender woman, and I'm attracted to straight men.
Cool. So I'm going to throw this, maybe a quiz at you guys. How do we say LGBTQ in Hmong? So who wants to start first? Because I was helping out this LGBTQ community organization, trying to help translate the LGBTQ into Hmong, and it's been like asking so many people, trying to like, how do we say that in Hmong? How do we, besides zining ye zining or bunye ye bunye, or like zining or bunye, like what's the proper way of how do we say that in Hmong?
Okay.
Or how would you like people to say that to you in Hmong?
Can I start?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so in the Hmong language, to my understanding, there isn't really a definition or a term that we could refer to. So the term that I heard from over the years is gatoy. So when someone is gay, LGBTQ, the only term that the elderly could refer to is gatoy, and that's like a Thai term for gay or trans. So from my experience, that's what I would say.
Joanne, Momo, Lisa, any stab at it?
Yeah, on that same breath, I agree with her, because actually when I first came out to my mom, I didn't know how. At the time, I was dating someone who's trans, non-binary, and I was just on the phone with my mom, telling her that I just started dating someone, telling her about this person's name and like where they're from. And for some reason, like, I don't know, mother's instinct, she was like, oh, is this person a boy? I'm like, no. Is this person a girl? I'm like, no. And then the next word she used, which I wasn't familiar with, was katoy. And then I asked her what that meant. And she was like, explained to me, oh, someone who was once one gender and then transitioned to the other gender. But she was speaking in binary terms. So with limited language, especially the Hmong language, the best answer I could give her is yes, katoy then. So I wish that there was more language in the Hmong language to be more inclusive. But so if folks know any additional terms that I may not be aware of, I would love to learn.
Joanna, Momo, do you guys want to put some input on that?
No, I agree with both.
Yeah.
I mean, katoy, like they said, it's a Thai word, but for us, it's just paninya, pania, sininnya, sining, and there's nothing for trans.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. When I talked to my family about it, I just said gay. You'd speak in Hmong and then you just say gay. And I think I think gay men are the most privileged in our community, right? Like the word gay has had the most representation in society and in media. And there's really no way to escape it. And so, and then I didn't have to explain myself more than that either. So yeah, and actually never really thought about that.
So what age did you guys start feeling different, or knowing that you might be attracted to the opposite sex? Someone wants to take a stab at that? Let's go, Lucida. What's about you?
All right. For me, I started to feel a lot different when I was about at least 5 or 6. When I'm developing and growing up, I'm very curious about a lot of things. Majority of the things that I've done growing up, now I look back at it, I love to do the bandao, flower cloth. I love to cook. I love to clean. So, I mean, all of these are like woman roles.
Yeah.
So as I got older, I just never stopped. And then one day, surprise. So that's where I'm at.
Did you ever felt like when you came out that you're trans, or you felt like um, you feel like a woman? I don't know if your family is still old tradition, but did they do jingle bells on you to kind of find your soul, or and how did you feel about that?
Okay, so now you brought up the shaman. My dad is actually a shaman,
Mhm.
and both my parents are super traditional. My dad is very active in the Hmong community. So how I slowly opened to my parents about the transgender part is I used to perform in drag. Um, I started to do drag slowly. Just I want to make sure it's not a phase. I want to try it out and kind of like opening my box
Yeah.
and just try new things. So exposing my parents a little bit to me cross-dressing, that was really interesting. And then again, with my parents being well known in the community, are very active, there has been a lot of like, my parents, they've been bashed, they've been, lots of negative things been said to them, but to sit down with them and talk to them about being transgender and stuff like that, I never really have done that part yet. It's just I want to live my life, and I moved out and just did my own thing because I don't want to hurt my family.
Yeah.
So it's been, over 10 plus years, and they're more open to it. But when I first started out, my dad thought I was crazy. He said I need to go get my brain checked out, or for a second they thought I was mental because I was never home. I didn't want to come home. I did not want to be in a position where I don't know how to start that conversation with them.
Yeah.
So
How about Joanne? Like, what age did you feel? I mean, to say the word different, it seems kind of a little weird. But like, what age did you feel like you are attracted to the opposite sex, or start diving into experimenting?
Um, much like Lucida, around 5, 6, so kindergarten age, I knew I was a little bit different when I was attracted to both boys and girls in kindergarten. But I think I didn't really come into terms with it until I was in middle school. So back in the days when I was growing up in the early 80s, I mean, gay wasn't a term that, gay was a word that people used so loosely back then. Like, oh, you're so funny, you're so gay. So
Yeah.
I never knew that was like a negative thing. And I never knew that I was gay. I just knew I was a little bit different because I was attracted to both. So yeah, I didn't come to terms until I was in middle school. And I had conversations with my sister in regards to it. But I think during that time, we were still so young, and it was, like I said, early 80s, that we didn't really know enough about it, where you just said, okay.
And how about you, Lisa?
Yeah, I along the same lines, I think I was consciously aware of my sexuality as early on as grade school. And I remember fighting the feelings of, well, one, being attracted to cis boys. People would say, you're too young to like have a little boyfriend. I don't know if y'all had any extended family members who would tease you like that. But I certainly did. And then I realized that I was also attracted to some of the girls in my classroom. And then I was very open to myself about my sexuality. I allowed myself to explore. And it wasn't until I was in high school that I also discovered that I was attracted to folks outside of the binary gender as well. And then that's when college arrived, and I came across the term pansexual, but definitely started as early as grade school.
How about you, Momo?
I remember when we were younger, we'd watch those like Chinese movies with like the wushu with like the sword fighting and stuff. And I remember this one time my dad said, "Oh, that guy's a pretty attractive hero in the movie." And so then I was like, "Oh, I was thinking the same thing." And so I just thought that that was normal. And then I never really explored sexually, nor did I really think about it. We grew up very Christian, and I just felt that that I couldn't be gay, that I shouldn't be gay. And then a lot of the gay men that you saw on TV were extremely flamboyant, and didn't were things that like I didn't quite identify with. And so I was like, well, then that means I can't be gay. I had girlfriends throughout high school and college, and relationships with women were okay, and sex with women were okay. And it wasn't until my early 20s where I explored a bit, and I was like, wow, like relationships can be amazing, like sex can be beautiful, when I had those things with men.
Did you felt different when the first time you kiss a girl to the first time you kiss a man, and kind of like have different emotion when you do kiss a man versus a girl?
Completely. I don't even know how to explain it. Like I think a lot of times when gay men talk about kissing women, they're like, yuck, it's disgusting. But then when I kissed women, it wasn't terrible. And so I was like, well, then I guess I can't be gay. But then when I remember my first kiss I had with a guy who actually was a friend at the time, and we were at a bar, and we both dropped things down on the ground. And so we both bent over to go pick him up. And we were so close to each other that like his cheek brushed mine.
But Ben is
And
now.
yeah, like just
Ben is
having
now.
just having his cheek brush mine,
Yeah.
it sent like electricity through my body. And I was like, whoa, this is insane. And then we were at a bar at the time, and so we kept drinking, and I'm assuming he felt the same thing. And then we just kissed, and I was like, whoa, this is how kissing should be. This is how great it could be. And that's when I was like, when everything kind of started changing for me.
So what age did you guys come out? And like, how did your family or friends or, your parents felt about it? Like at what age, and what made you build up that momentum to be like, I'm just going to release everything. I'm just going to tell the world so I could live my truth and find my truth, and, and start this journey of the unknown, because it's so unknown to the Hmong community, especially, so you want to start, Joanne?
Okay, so my story is a little bit different. So I was married for about 16 years, had 3 kids. So I didn't really come out until after my divorce. And I was about 35 years old that I came out to my sisters at my sister's baby shower, and then to my mom, and then eventually my dad. So it wasn't, I guess my coming out story wasn't as bad. My experience wasn't bad because I think I've already been through life. So my family already knew the trials and tribulations that I went through, my suffering and stuff. So they were really open to it. I think when I told my mom, she was more concerned about my dad. And so all she said was, make sure you have that conversation with your dad. And so a week later I did, and my dad and I are really close. So having that conversation with him wasn't hard. I just came out and said, I like girls and I'm going to start dating girls.
So did you feel like that pressure was off because you already have kids for your parents? Like kids is a big thing for our parents, so.
Yeah, I think, yes, I felt like that pressure wasn't there because I already lived my life according to how they wanted me to live my life. Now it was my turn to live my life the way I wanted to. So I felt like, I had a failed marriage. I did what they wanted, married a man, had kids, did the best that I could in that marriage. And now, I put in 110% into that, and now my life is like this. And so he didn't say much. My dad, he didn't yell. He wasn't disappointed. All he said is, no, but you have to get married again. You need to siseng o ning na, you know, like what if your ex-husband gets married first? I'm like, I don't care. And so it was more of what is the world gonna think than of me not getting married,
Yeah.
you know? And so I was
Right.
like, oh no, I said I'm fine, you know, I have my kids and stuff. And so he was a little he wasn't upset. We had a really good conversation, and he asked, what it is, like, what is it, you know, how is it to be a lesbian, like how are you gonna fulfill your lifetime being a lesbian? And so it was just having that open conversation and him willing to accept that conversation. And so as time went on, you know, like I was educating him
Yeah.
in regards to it. He met my girlfriend, and you know, and he was still a little hesitant, kept giving me like space and said, couple months, okay. I think it's just a phase that you're going through because of your divorce. And I said, no, Dad, it's not. Well, it is. 10 years later, I'm still with my girlfriend. He's definitely fully accepted it. I want to say a year after we started dating. And they even drink to it. So yep. And so my girlfriend does call my parents mom and dad. They drink to it. And my dad always asks her, do you want to go hunting or do you want to cook? And so she's smart. She's always like hunting. And so he treats her like a son-in-law. So
That's good. How did your coming out to your kids or how did your ex-husband felt about this? And did he felt like, okay, this divorce wasn't my fault, it was her fault because she felt she had more attraction to a girl? Like, did you ever felt that sensation? Like, how do you react to it? What?
I said nobody has ever asked me that. My ex-husband and I had a really not so good divorce. So it was not because I was queer, it was because of domestic violence. So that is something on its own. I think he tried to use me being queer as the reason why. So I think I can't speak for him, but I think he might have had a hard time just because I was in a relationship with a girl. In regards to my kids, my oldest, I think he was angry in the beginning because he felt like that might have been the reason why the family got broken up. But I think as time went by and as he grew up, he realized that it wasn't it was a toxic relationship for me to be in. And now with my relationship with my girlfriend, like he realized that things were different. So his understanding of it was a little bit better. My daughter, she was, she kind of knew. So she's like, well, I already knew, Mom. So I'm like, okay. My baby, however, I think he was 6 years old at that time. He took it really hard. He took it really, really hard. And he cried and he hung on to my leg. And the first thing he said to me was, what are my friends gonna think, Mom? You were never like this. What are my friends gonna think? And it killed me inside. And then he's like, I'm going on a hunger strike. I'm not going to eat until Thursday. But then it was funny because he wouldn't talk to me, but he would talk to my girlfriend. So everything he needed, he was like, Sue, can you do this? Sue, this. And he'll still talk to her. He'll eat with her, but he wouldn't talk to me. And so I reached out to a friend, and we met, and he had a long, I believe it was like 2-hour session with my son. And then after that, things were a lot better. And I think he was just scared because he was scared to come out to his friends. But then he had a friend at that time, and he finally like had the courage to say, hey, Sean, you know, like Sue and Joanne are both my mom. And he's like, oh, that's so cool. My uncles are gay. And then after that, it was like, he never brought it up again. And he's embraced it. He is definitely an advocate for it and my number one ally. So
That's awesome. I mean, I know this is hard for you, but I hope somebody out there that has been through what you've been through and trying to understand these new feelings and unanswered questions that they might have brewed up in their brain, and to see your story, that I hope they will inspire them, that they can move on and have that conversation with their parents and have that conversation with their kids if they have kids. Because us Hmong community, like a lot of our parents were arranged marriage or forced marriage, and they might be feeling the same way as what you went through. So I'm so glad that you have that conversation. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So Lucinda, do you want to highlight what age did you come out, and
All right, so the age that I came out was in high school. I came out as gay because, of course, I'm very feminine. Being a boy and being very feminine, I came out as gay. I was very flamboyant, and I make a notice back at that time. But coming out to my parents, they thought I was gay, so they're like, okay, whatever. We have a gay son. Okay, and then the cross-dressing started to come. And that's where my parents took it the hardest. The first time my parents ever see me cross-dress was at La Crosse Hmong New Year. I cross-dressed, full drag, went on stage, did my thing. It was crazy because the crowd has never seen a drag queen, especially being Hmong. And at this time, the LGBTQ in the Hmong community were not really established yet. So to be the first one to perform and caught some attention, it was really scary. Yes, I ignored my parents for a couple of days. I did not come home because I know there's going to be a ton of questions thrown at me. I remember my brother told me that when I went on stage and performed, my dad cried because he just couldn't believe it. My parents felt humiliated.
Mm.
And again, I was in high school and I was still discovering myself. And I cross-dress and perform in drag because there was a sensation inside of me that I just want to express myself. And the only way I can do it is that closest to being a woman is drag queen. And I used it as an excuse that, hey, I'm an entertainer, I'm performing, I will never be a woman, I'm just doing it for fun and don't worry about it. So I try my best to brush it off. But as the time goes by, that sensation, it did not go away. It just kept on growing and growing and growing. And I felt like I was dying slowly. And I couldn't tell my parents what I was going through. And then I'm not sure, have you guys heard of soy, shades of yellow, among LGBTQ? So my cousin reached out to me and was like, hey, Lucy, do you want to go to, they're looking for pageant girls. And since you do drag, we thought about you because they're looking for performers. So that's when I started reaching out and for support, because I'm like, okay, am I the only one? Because at that time, I felt like I was the only one. Now, this is like 14, 15 years ago. And I seriously thought I was the only one. So I started to reach out for support, and we made some headlines in the Hmong communities, and there was a few pictures taken. And then that's where one of my cousin called my mom like, hey, your son came up here and your son competed in this beauty pageant that's for LGBTQ people, or Gatoy people again. And my mom asked me that question. My mom was like, did you go to a beauty pageant? Because one of your cousins just told us that you were in a beauty pageant and you were very pretty. And I'm like, oh, shoot, how do I get away with this? So my mom was like, oh, whatever you do, as long as you're not transitioning over to a woman or, having a sex change, we'll just leave it at that. And as the time goes by, my parents knew that I was never home and there was something wrong with me because I did not get along with my parents. And I was just never home and I was constantly looking for support. How can I come out? So I reached out to another group called Galaxy. And the first person that I came out to is my oldest sister. I'm very grateful for my oldest sister because she listened to me and I go to her for advice. And she's the first person that I told that I was gay, and then she was also the first person that I told that I feel like I am transgender. And then how I fully know the term transgender is through the support group Galaxy. One day we have a guest speaker, and she was a transgender woman. And now I was like 15, 16, 17, around that age. And I remember going to the speaker for that night, and I remember seeing this tall woman, but I could tell that it's a man. And I'm like, oh my God, what is that? I was so curious, and I followed her all the way up to the room that we're gonna have the guest speaker. And I was like, oh my gosh, she's the guest speaker. And from there, expressed herself, how her struggles, and she's married, have kids, and going through the transition. And right there, that's when I was like, okay, that's me. That's how I feel. That's me right there. And from that point on, I never stopped doing drag. So every year in Minnesota, for their tournament or like events, I will come and do performance and just cross dress, because that's the closest I could express myself, and then use it as an excuse that, hey, I'm just doing it for performing.
And what something that I would have to give you credit, because you were probably the first Hmong transgender person that I ever heard about and knew, just because of like your braveness of going on Hmong TV and did the interview. And it was beautiful and powerful, because I was like, I literally was like, oh, there's Hmong transgender. I did not know that. And it was like kind of like hearing your story was really motivating, and understanding that we're at that point in the Hmong community where people are starting to come out and say, this is who I am and I want to live in my truth. So I just want to say that that's such a beautiful thing. And how about you, Momo? What age did you come out, and how did that experience to your family, your parents, or friends?
I came out around, I think I was 24 years old. Um, I I remember, I guess I'm the youngest male in among my siblings, and in Hmong tradition, the parents always stay and live with the youngest. And so then when I started to think about, oh, I'm gonna be with a man, and then my parents are gonna have to deal with that. Like I remember having so much fear and anxiety about it. Like my mind, like my head would get hot. And so finally, I so one of the problems with having those sorts of expectations put on you, I didn't feel safe talking to my friends, and I didn't feel safe talking to my family about my sexuality. And so I ended up trying to talk about my sexuality with a gay friend who I had, which was unfortunately like the wrong person to talk to. And it sent me down a road that was really bad. And so by the time I got to a point where I was like, you know what, I'm just going to tell my parents. I'm going to tell my family. It didn't matter. I didn't have that same anxiety anymore. I think my parents took it pretty hard. They couldn't say like you have to leave because I wasn't living with them anymore. So like it didn't matter. But I struggled with the fact that they stopped being parents to me. That they, because I used to ask like, because I wanted parents, I wanted family that was concerned with like who I was dating, or not concerned, but wanted to know about who I was dating and where things were going, and those sorts of things. And once I came out and told everybody that I was gay, everyone stopped asking. Even my older brother and sister didn't really acknowledge that part of who I was. And it got more and more difficult over time. There were a few relationships that didn't go very well. And I struggled with the fact that I couldn't.
Because being the youngest son, like, did you, and you kind of like the male figure kind of like banished you in a sense. Like, did you felt like you were relying on your friends to be that brother or be that sister, be that family that that your family have abandoned you? Like, did you ever felt that way?
Yeah. I mean, I think I still struggle with feelings of abandonment. And even though they didn't they didn't kick me out or disown me. They stopped being all the things that were important to me when it came to being family. Yeah.
Lisa, how about you?
And
What? Continue.
oh, I
Sorry.
was going to say, so then, I guess, and I feel like a lot of people in our community have to go out and we have to go find our own family, and sometimes it works great and you find people that you can completely trust in. And I think other times you find the wrong sort of people. And that's the struggle. And that's kind of what I caution the Hmong community with, to make sure that we do tell our queer family members that we love them and that they are loved, and that they're deserving of it. Because a lot of times when you go and you search for that, you're going to find bad experiences and bad people.
Lisa, how about you? What age did you come out, and how did your family or friends or people that's close to you felt about it?
Yeah, just reflecting, I didn't come out. I came out to myself probably, as I mentioned, way early on, middle school, even when I was officially out to myself. But I didn't tell anyone until I was in college. The reason why I waited was definitely fear driven. What would my loved ones say? Because my dad had a seat with the 18 council, representing like the Yang clan, I knew too that, I don't know, for him, I was afraid that I would embarrass him. Right now, I'm thinking, wow, that is such a toxic way to think, that fear. But once I had the verbiage in my vocabulary to really describe how I felt about myself and my identity, which was pansexual, I actually learned that term from my younger sister. So a little background, I'm the third youngest child out of 11 children, all from the same parents. Yeah, huge family. So growing up, waiting in line for the bathroom sucked.
I mean, you guys can start your own 18 clan with that family.
Exactly. So in my mind, my dad has two sons, the rest of us are girls. And I'm thinking, okay, he at least has two sons. So thankfully, I don't hold that type of responsibility of carrying on the family name, but I still knew just the position that my dad was holding in society, in the Hmong community. That I'm like, I'm not gonna say anything. So I held on to that until college, when my sister Kimmy and I took the same Asian American class. I think it was Asian American history at UW-Madison. This was back in like 2014, 2015. And she actually, we were living together. So it's wild to me that in our class that we had together, it was my very first time hearing her present the project. And it was about Asian cis women activists. And she identified as pansexual. I was like, wait, what is that? What is that terminology? And I actually took her out for Korean barbecue that same week. And I was like, yeah, so about your project, can you tell me more about it? And then I was like, hey, I think I'm pansexual. And my sister, I was sweaty. I remember I didn't even eat yet. The fact that I'm sweating, and I'm like, okay, can you think I'm pansexual? And she paused for a moment, and I was lucky. She was very loving and kind and careful, where she was like, oh, that's awesome. Like, have you looked into any resources or whatnot for like support? And actually, back to Lucidia, I was recommended soy as well. And unfortunately, never got around to attending one of the soy events. However, by the time I was ready to make a trip out to Minnesota, soy had closed its doors. So I'm hoping that, an organization like soy, or maybe soy, will come back as well, because I was frantically searching for LGBTQ folks in the Hmong community to link up with. And actually, Momo here on the panel played a key role in that as a part of my chosen family. I was looking for terminology, looking to experience the LGBTQ plus community outside of Wisconsin, if not in Wisconsin, then outside of it. So at the time, Momo was in LA, and I like hit him up. I flew out there, and he took me to explore like WeHo, West Hollywood, which is has prominent LGBTQ plus communities in that area. And this was after coming out to my sister. I do want to note too, though, that like at that time I was dating a straight cis man. And we dated for 5.5 years. I came out to him shortly after I came out to my younger sister. And I was really nervous that we were dating. We were 3 months into our relationship out of 5.5 years. And when I came out to him, you know, I was like, this is going to make or break our relationship. You know, either he's going to not want to date me no more, or he is, but either way, like this is a moment of truth. Either way, this is still who I am, and I'm going to own it and be confident in it. Luckily, he was very welcoming, more than just receptive, very welcoming, and was open and willing to go on the journey with me of discovering what it meant to be a queer cis woman.
Did you ever felt like because he was a straight cis man, like because being a straight man and had the fantasy of having two girls, did you ever felt that might have been the thing that kept your relationship together, or did he actually truly love you, or like that sense, like?
Yeah, that's a great question. That's a really great question because reality is too, there's a lot of fetishizing, right, for folks who are not straight and who are not cis. So I was very lucky that was never even a conversation or a topic that he had brought up. It was actually a topic that I brought up because I'm like, I just need to double check that you are good. You know, that you are someone that I want to continue dating, and you're not just welcoming me because of like a fantasy that you have.
So how did being gay, cis, pan, trans, queer, like, did that affect your career or your career choice? Did people turn you down because of the job position, because, you were gay, lesbian, and on the LGBTQ community? Like, did that affect you in your career and, education in a sense?
I really love that question because that I was not open about my sexuality. I made sure in every job role that I was in that I didn't even bring up my sexuality. First and foremost, because I felt like it was irrelevant to my performance in the role. So if that was an issue, then clearly the company doesn't align with my values. So I was closed about it. Unless my coworkers and we built like a trusting relationship, then I would be more open to welcoming that person into my personal life. But I was also scared of discrimination. I mean, yes, it's 2021. However, I mean, we also know it's still 2021. There's still so much work to be done.
Yeah,
and
I had this last year. That's crazy.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So I intentionally also built my own company, Faceted Beauty, because I was like, I want to build a company that is inclusive and diverse, not just saying it, right, and marketing it that way, but really through from the culture. And the best way to work for a company that is welcoming, inclusive, and diverse and equitable, why not just start one?
Yeah.
Right.
How about you, Joanne? Like, has being, your identifiers, did you feel like, it affected your career? And how
I
did you
don't think
navigate
so.
it?
I'm like Lisa stated, I choose to share where I'm comfortable with to share. I have to build that trusting relationship with that coworker or that staff member for me to share, but I don't go out there saying, hey, I'm queer, I have to put on a mask. Like if I don't feel comfortable, I'll put on a mask, and it doesn't change who I am just because I'm queer. I'm still me, regardless if I'm going down the street or school or not. And I don't want people to discriminate just because of that queer label. So
Yeah.
I pick and choose. So, but it has never, I've never had issues with it.
How about you, Lucida?
Okay, so I used to work for this company. I did manufacturing for 10 years. And one of my personal goals is I want to advance with the company. So I voiced it myself to my boss. And I'm like, hey, when there's an opportunity, I would like to grow with the company because I'm looking for something that I can stay with for long term. And my boss, he said he's very he said he's very diverse, but how his action towards me is very negative. So he would write me up on the dumbest things just so it will pull me back. Or
Is that before your transition or is that after your
during
transition?
during
So
during the
so he kind of saw you as the man transitioning into a woman. That
Correct.
process. Okay.
Yeah, and then he never looked at me as like a woman, but his action speaks for itself. Someone could tell you something, but their action is what's louder than their words. So I got wrote up for some stupid things that I didn't even know, and that held me back. And after 10 years, I didn't felt like I was valued to that company, and I just end up leaving. I walked out because I cannot do it no more. And then I did restaurant managing. I managed a little Hmong restaurant in La Crosse, Wisconsin. I started out as their cook, and then I got promoted to their kitchen manager. So I stick with them for 3 years because even if it's about my ability, I'm very good at managing when it comes to food and stuff. So they saw my ambition, and I love food. I'm sure you guys, if you guys look at my page, I'm flooded with food.
Too much food, makes me jealous.
So so I left that job and I came up here to Minnesota, and I started out as one of their chefs at one of the senior living facilities. And then from there, I'm just very grateful because my boss, again, I had that conversation with him too. I'm like, hey, I know that you know that I'm trans, but when there's an opportunity, I would appreciate it if you could give me the opportunity and let me show what I'm capable of, because I know what I'm capable of. But if you don't give me that opportunity, I can't express what my ability is. So I take charge, and then I'm very grateful that my boss, he saw that the passion, he saw my ambition, he saw my drive. And then I was really surprised that when he resigned to go to a different opportunity, he gave me a really good word of mouth. And right there, I got the job, right? I got promoted right away.
That's
So
awesome.
that's where I'm at today. And again, I did not have a degree. I went to school for it for a little bit, but I'm one of those people, I'm more hands-on. So that's how I landed at my career right now as a food service director.
So before we go to Momo, with Lucida, like being so open, so she could, get, that the promotion. Did you guys ever felt like if you guys were open about your sexuality, you won't have that stigma of like, I didn't get that promoted because someone knew, if that makes sense? Lisa and Joanna.
So are you saying like, are we not open because of that chance that we might not get the position? Or
Yeah. And it just kind of contrasts with, Lucinda being basically being more open that she's trans and having that open conversation with her boss ahead of time. Like, did you guys ever felt like the stigma of, I know you guys want to build that relationship, that openness, that trust before you do tell your coworker or your boss that, you are LGBTQ. So did you guys ever felt like that might have, hindered your position or any way?
I mean, I don't believe so. I work for Wells Fargo, and Wells Fargo is very inclusive
Mm.
of especially the LGBTQ community. I mean, I've been offered a lot of opportunities because of it. So I don't think it would hinder my ability to move up in the company. Um, I think refraining from sharing with people is my own thing. Like I don't want people to look at me differently. I don't want, and it's not just management, but it's like my staff or the people I work with. I just don't want them to look at me differently, especially if they have different views. I want them just still to treat me like a human being. And I think that's the reason why I don't share unless I build that rapport with them.
Yeah.
But I don't think it would hinder my ability to move up at all if I was to be out and open, just because of the environment I work in the company I work for.
How about you, Lisa? You want to add something to that?
Yeah, I definitely second what Joanna was saying. And, I will have to say that when I was working at Harvard Innovation Labs, that was the first place that I was open. And it was really feeling safe because one of my coworkers, who's our operations manager, she's been out, as a lesbian woman. And I felt like, wow, okay, this is great. Like, I feel welcome, I felt safe. And I started to share that with my coworkers. Like, we would go for outings after like a long event that we hosted and whatnot. But it wasn't something that I intentionally refrained from when it comes to my sexuality. I think generally what I've learned when I had my first job out of college, I learned very quickly that you only share what you want people to know, right? I mean, when there's a fine line between your personal life and your professional life. So I agree with Joanne too. It's like all about building that rapport. Like, if you feel like you have that relationship with a coworker, then of course something to share. But it wasn't something that I intentionally refrained from.
So Momo, so because you're more of a masculine guy, and so like the thing, it's like a lot of people will not, if they first meet you, they won't know if you were gay. So do you feel like being masculine versus being feminine, did that, of other friends being feminine, does that affect your career?
So it really depended on the job that I was doing. So when I was working at Apple, I was completely out, and there was no question about it. But then when I moved to LA, I was working for a Korean production company. And they had asked me, so my boss knew, and a few of the other coworkers knew, but my boss had asked me to kind of keep my sexuality on the DL for two reasons, right? So one reason is production in itself, like film and commercials, is a very masculine driven industry. So you kind of have this like guy talk, and they were concerned that if I came out as queer or as a gay man, that they would start questioning, can he carry that heavy box of things? Can he, is he going to be a drama queen about this or that? So when I worked at that Korean production company, I hid my sexuality as much as I could. And I was surprised at the little things that, even being in LA, I was surprised at the little things that people would say. Like this one time on a trip, I had brought these Hello Kitty Band-Aids with me. And I didn't even think that it was gay or whatever. I had lived in Japan when I was younger. And in Japan, like, you can have pink things, you can have character band-aids, and it's not a big deal. And so I had these Hello Kitty band-aids. I didn't think of it. And so like I whipped them out because I had a paper cut, or someone else had a paper cut. And my production manager turns around and goes, "Momo, why do you have Hello Kitty band-aids? Are you gay?" And for a second I was like, is that what straight people think? That if you have Hello Kitty band-aids, that's what defines you as a gay man?
Next time, bring BTS band-aids.
Right? So, and then so when I was working with that production company, it was kind of a factor. I also noticed there were other sweeping like gender roles to be played too. So for example, we had a Korean producer who was a woman, and she had gotten really drunk, and she had asked me to take her back to her hotel room. Now, if our genders were reversed, and if I was a girl and she was a man, that would have never happened, and my coworkers would have never allowed that to happen. But then because I was a man and she was a woman, they're like, "Oh, do it! You have to do it! You have to do this stuff!" And I'm like, "Why am I being made uncomfortable? Purely because I'm a man, you know?" So it was very interesting. That was the only time I ever hid my sexuality. After I left the company, I was like, you know what? F this. I moved on to different production companies. I was out to everyone. When I worked for, after that, I worked for a Japanese production company, and I was like, I'm just gonna tell them. And we did butt heads on a couple of things at first. I remember when I first interviewed, they had asked my friend if, because she had told them that I was a gay man, and they had asked, is he dramatic? Should we worry about him being dramatic? And so it's kind of working through those things first, and then they were like, oh, okay, like he can still do this, he can still do that. You know, his sexuality doesn't necessarily define what he can and can't do.
So now this is an open forum, and anybody could start off and jump on top of each other. Let's talk about patriarchy, because that's big in the Hmong community. How do you handle it or navigate through it for being part of the LGBTQ community? Anybody could start. Want to start, Joanna?
Sure. I feel like I navigate through it like anybody else, like my sisters. I mean, just because I'm part of the LGBTQ community doesn't mean that I go through different things. I feel like I still have the same struggles as my sister, as my brother, you know, so for me,
So how do you how do you want to see patriarch play for the next generation? Because for us, I'm so used to saying that's the system, that's how we have to run things, but I'm open to improve it, you know. So how, in your sense, like, what advice do you want your brothers or your uncles to start opening their minds to help improve, you know, the old tradition to the next level of new traditions?
well, you know, the only thing that comes to mind would be to be able to have that open communication about the LGBT community without feeling like it's taboo. Like even still, like my brothers are younger than me, and just they're comfortable with my sexuality to a point. They're super respectful to my girlfriend and I when we're around. They definitely treat her like she's one of the guys. But just having that, being able to have that really truly authentic open communication in regards to the LGBT community. I think they dance around it sometimes because they're not 100% comfortable, but I'm hoping that that will change. I don't, definitely won't be this generation, maybe not even in my kids' generation, but definitely like at least start the conversation. I don't believe it's going to change anytime soon.
But Lisa or Lucida or Momo, you guys want to add something to patriarch and your views on it and how to move forward about it?
I'll say something. One thing that I always tell everybody is, you know, we are so unique, right? So as queer Hmong people, we come from these two communities that have for generations fought to find a home, to find safety, to find love, right? So both as like Hmong people and as queer people, and we have that resiliency on both parts of who we are, and these two very separate but yet unified parts of who we are. And so when people are like, oh, I'm like, I can't imagine that our ancestors are up there looking down on us and not cheering us on to go, you know, you go find safety, you go find home, you go find your family, go find love. We are the first generation that didn't fear the rainbow. there's the Hmong belief that when there was a rainbow that haya zhang, kulu, not and our generation didn't grow up with that fear. And I think that's kind of unique to our situation. We're finally the generation that goes, you know what, this is actually probably okay. That it is all right to search for love that doesn't look like what it has for generations. And I hope that we start talking more about being queer. But then also I think we need to talk about how we treat women in our culture. And we put a lot of things on, well, this is how things have always been done. Women are always been like this. Children have always acted this way. Fathers are always right. And those are all aspects of our community that we have to talk about and be more open about, and understand that a lot of times those things can be wrong. Tradition can be wrong.
Lisa,
Yeah,
oh,
I couldn't agree more with that statement. I feel like with addressing when it comes to patriarchy and LGBTQ plus community within the Hmong community, I think first we need to address the gender roles that are, strictly pushed on people under patriarchy, right? Because patriarchy is that it's having, cis men take over the family, the money, all of those decisions. I think when we take a hard good look at what gender roles are assigned in the Hmong community, we can really understand how can we be equitable in carrying that weight and carrying that type of, I guess, honor, what people like to say. But I would love to see, because for me, I grew up wanting to cut the grass, but in my household, it was reserved for the boys, for the men in the family. I grew up wanting to go hunting, but because I was a girl, I couldn't. And for me, my girlfriend, she's a cis woman, Cynthia. So I know that when we get to that point of bringing our families together, we're once again going to be facing the gender norms, the patriarchy in the Hmong community. And we've already had conversations of like, well, for a Hmong wedding, how would that look? Because traditionally people are used to seeing like a binary gender, of a man and a woman getting married under Hmong rules and Hmong terms. So how would that look if two queer people were to be married and are of the same sex and gender?
so who
so
will be paying who will be
Right.
paying? Which family will be paying? Or do you guys
Both.
split the cost?
Okay, Cynthia and I tell you, I kid you not, like from the moment we started dating, I was like, listen, this is my bride price. What's yours?
What is your bride price? You knock up, huh?
I have to say, like, bride price is also rooted in like gender norms, I have to say, like in sexism. So that's something in its own topic to talk about for sure. But for the respect of my parents, my bride price is it's like at least 10K. Come on, So
With
Cynthia
those
knows
nails? Come on.
at least 10K, please. So she knows.
How about you, Lucida? Anything about
Well,
patriarch?
I would have to really agree. You guys basically said it all. So I don't know what else to add, honestly. One thing I would have to say, just respect. If you also notice, a lot of the Hmong people, we don't really respect each other. I'm sure we do. We respect other people, but like just support is the only thing I can think of right now. And you guys said it all.
So talking about respect, like through the years, there's been many occasions of violence against transgender community. Were you ever like afraid of your life, or is there something that you would like the community to understand how to be more aware of, or so they could not like commit any type of violence against transgender?
Okay, so now speaking back to Joanne, talking about violence against women, I myself had experienced violence from a Hmong man. Surprisingly, the first person to sexually assault me was a Hmong man. So when it comes to gender roles, like you guys mentioned, I think a lot of the woman is frowned upon. We're looked down. When I transition, I'm gonna again speak from my experience. When I transition, I remember my dad telling me like, "Why would you want to degrade yourself? Why would you want to, be looked down on as women are so-called lower grade than men?" So I still struggle sometimes with my dad in that part. And it's been over 10 plus years. So did
So
that
talk about that respect. Have you guys ever been bullied or cyberbullied? I mean, for Lucida, like you're out there, you're on social media, you take beautiful picture of you in the female form. Like, do you guys, like, for example, Momo and Joanne and Lisa, like, you guys are just, your emotions are different from the norm. So do you guys ever get cyberbullied or bullied, and how do you guys overcome that? Or people that know you and and people are whispering behind your back and cyberbully or bully you, like, how do you guys navigate that?
I try not to put myself in that situation. I feel like I personally have never been bullied or cyberbullied. I've lost quite a few friends coming out. But I feel like it's their loss, not mine. I'm still the same person. Um, I have never I've never had anybody come at me negatively. I think that there's only one time when we went to Vegas, my partner and I and my kids went to Vegas, that they didn't attack me, but they attacked my girlfriend, which I felt some sort of way, but I know that my kids took it way harder, to the point where they're like, kick his butt and da da da, why he disrespected that. But I personally can't. I've never gone through it, so I don't know. What I would definitely. I wouldn't know how to feel in regards to
Momo,
it.
Lisa, or Lucida?
Um, I feel like I had more pressure like ever since coming out. I think I can be flamboyant like on internet, and like no one really cares, right? Like I feel right now in our society as a cisgender gay man, I can clap with my fan, I can do all these things, and everybody be like, yes, girl, do your thing or whatever. And I think because we do have a lot of representation on TV and in media and all these things. I feel like I had more bullying when in my younger years, just trying to be masculine, even when I was straight. I remember people would call me like Homo the Momo or Momo the Homo when I was younger. And then I came out, and then no one would ever call me that again. I'm like, come on, guys, like it's easy. But it's interesting how people love to degrade you when they know that's your struggle, when you're just trying to be a man, right? And they want to grade you there, and then when you accept who you are and you're flamboyant and you're confident, it doesn't matter anymore. So it's very interesting how that changes. And I'm also very lucky to be in Los Angeles, so I don't know how things are in other parts of the country.
Yeah, I mean, like, again, like when I was in New York, I had tons of gay and trans and lesbian, because like I'm in the arts, so like you're dealing with so many, the vast of community, and try to be collaborative about work, so that's why it's when going back home to Minnesota, you see such a shift when you talk about LGBTQ community, so how about Lisa and Lucida? How do you guys navigate through cyberbully or bully, or if you ever been bullied or cyberbullied?
Okay, so how do I navigate through cyberbullying and stuff like that? Me personally, I just try not to let it bother me. So when I first did that interview with Sapo, part one and part two, someone from the Hmong community made a video just degrading me throughout the whole PowerPoint that they were doing. And for this person to have like literally 10 minutes just to degrade me, my mom, my family, and me, just to try to get me, how would I say it? Tick me
Round
off
up. Oh.
and see what I'm gonna do. But what did I do? I did absolutely nothing, because at the end of the day, I'm happy, and that's not my problem. It's not my problem. And I tried to not let that bother me, because I'm myself, I'm happy as hell. And if someone is not happy with what they're seeing in front of, they don't got to look in front of me. It's not, I try not to make other people's problem my problem. And for them to have the audacity to have that time to make the video to degrade me, I did my best to not let my family see that, because I don't want them to be like, oh, we're worried for you because now someone might be after you because they don't like you because you're making publicity, you're talking about, you're encouraging other people. And I assure my family that that's not exactly what I'm doing. I'm just trying to inspire other people just to be themselves. And for this other individual, I could tell that it was a Hmong guy, because, you know, the whole video, he spoke in Hmong. Clearly, he had to make his voice a little bit higher because he wants to be, you know, hiding behind the screen. But at the end of the day, it wasn't my problem. And I didn't do absolutely nothing about it. But what I did was I continued talking about my life, my journey, and I inspired other transgender people. And throughout the years, I have countless people that reached out to me for support and suggestions and what should they do? How do they get started? So, I mean, at the end of the day, that's the most rewarding for me. Even if someone were to bash me or anything, I don't take it personally because it's not my problem. So that's how I look at it from the positive side.
How about you, Lisa?
Yeah, Lucidia, I so agree with you there. How I handle bullying and cyberbullying, especially when it comes to my sexuality and my identity as a whole, it first and foremost, you know, my recommendation, and it's worked for me. So, you know, take it with a grain of salt if you're looking for additional tips or tricks. But definitely it is more about the person themselves, you know, who is spewing anything but love or anything but hate, right? So as soon as I receive like a remark that is like degrading and disrespectful, I mean, I'm an Aries. I don't know if y'all know about zodiacs, but I'm definitely an Aries sign. So if you ask me to like be calm and not get into argument, that's pretty hard to do. I get fired up pretty quickly. So the thing that I do to help myself is to realize, okay, this is clearly about their ignorance, their lack of education, and lack of being open to understanding and learning. So this is more of a reflection about themselves rather than it is about me, because I know about me. I love me and I have confidence in me. So maybe this, if I feel like I want to invest my time, I have the energy, and I feel safe enough to have a conversation with that person and be like, hey, so the thing about you, what you said, like, why did you say that? For example, I actually had a family member who was not, who is homophobic. And as soon as they found out that I am queer, that I'm pansexual, and that I'm dating a woman, they actually had their kids like unfollow me on social media. And it hurt me so much, you know, and to find out through the grapevine that they said all this about me, it was very hurtful. I'm not gonna lie. I cried not out of sadness, but I cried out of anger. You know, like, how could you allow your own ignorance to be seated in your children's mind about me? It just be really, I feel like there's a lack of understanding of how powerful words are, and also when you say things in front of young people. So it was disheartening, but you know, actually, that's TBD. We still have to have that conversation. So I'll keep y'all posted.
So let's move on to Alish. Alish, I can't pronounce this word for me. Being an ally, what's the proper way of someone to be an ally to you, to your community, the LGBT community? What's the proper way to be an ally?
For me, I feel like it's having them take the initiative or the time to educate themselves. It's not my job to educate them, but for them to educate themselves, and just be supportive and willing to have open conversations. And I'm okay. And when I say it's not my job to educate them, I'm open to conversations, open to that. But if they come at me and they're ignorant and they ask distasteful questions, I'm not gonna respond. I'm not gonna have those conversations. So if they come to me and say, hey, you know, like, what is this? Like, I'm trying to have a, like, for example, my dad. So we were talking about sex between like a girl, but boy, right? And so we were talking about being asexual. So for me, I don't feel like he was being ignorant, but I feel like he was trying to understand the different types of people under the queer umbrella. So to the last 10 years, he doesn't know how to Google and ask questions and stuff like that. So I'm like his Google. So he'll be like, okay, well, what does this mean? Or what does it mean to be this and stuff? So we had a conversation about being asexual, but he was very respectful of his questions and kind of try to navigate where he wasn't offending me. I appreciate those conversations. But if you're coming at me and you're being not negative, but asking me ignorant questions, I'll be like, you got Google, go look it up, and then we can have that conversation.
Anybody else?
I would say to be a good ally is to be careful with the words that you choose. When I remember when I was first coming out, when I was first like starting to tell people, I didn't tell a lot of my friends because I would remember all these little comments, remarks that they made about gay people. Even if it's a joke, even if it's funny, in those moments when you're trying to come out, those things are so loud, right? And they're so scary that I chose not to tell those group of friends. And then I chose to believe in the wrong people to talk to. And later down the road, they were like, why didn't you come and tell me? Why didn't you come and confide in me? And I said, because of all of the terrible things that you've said about gay people, even if it was a joke, I remembered those things. And so if you didn't know that I was gay at that time, um, perhaps being careful of the words that you use, so that even if there aren't gay people around you, that queer people, that if there are possibly queer people around you all the time, and being careful with things that you say, because it does affect us, especially when you're still just trying to come out and understand who you are.
Lucida, how does it be to be a proper ally to a transgender per se, or pansexual?
I think, at least for me, allyship, there's also a lot of performative allyship, right? Like people, for example, a lot of large companies love to bring out the pride flag during Pride Month, but refuse to leave it hanging 365 days a year, which says a lot to me, especially. So for me, I feel like allyship, to be an ally of a person in the LGBTQ community, is really like educating yourself, right? Educating yourself first, and also respecting folks on how they want to be treated, like listening to someone on how they want to be treated, how they identify, respecting pronouns, right? And also, though, speaking up when, even if that person is not in the room, speaking up and like educating someone else who might be ignorant, saying something that is disrespectful, I think is really important. For example, one of my sisters, I had no idea that there were some conversations going on about, why is Lisa queer and da 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 da, and like a lot of hate speech going on. But without me even asking or being aware of it until later on, like she stood up for me, and stood up and defended me. So I think when it comes to allyship, it's really consisting of those three things: educating yourself, being respectful, right? And also standing up for folks.
How about you, Lucida?
To be a good ally, technically educate yourself, refer to people how they want to be called. Again, that falls under the respect. Um, and when something is, for example, like don't use the term gay. For example, if something is so, that is so gay, or they're so gay, instead of saying the word gay, replace it with exactly what you're trying to accomplish. It is so stupid. So when you say it is so gay, you're referring to as, gay people is stupid. I always, when I hear it, I always correct, especially for, I'll give you an example, like my staff, when they use that term, I always tell them, what are you trying to accomplish? Like, you should just use the correct word for it instead of just using the word gay, because I mean, yeah, that's an easier way to just refer to, but like, if you want to accomplish what you're trying to say, refer to the exact word that you're trying to accomplish. So if it's something stupid, use the word stupid. So basically, just respect is what I would say.
So as we trying to wrap up this, what advice do you guys have for for the younger generation who are going through this experience of coming out, or for example, you, Joanne, like what advice do you have for the the women out there that are in this relationship that they want now because that's not who they want to love, or to the boys and girls that want to transition. Like what advice do you guys have for them? Like how to deal with the family, any word of encouragement, things to avoid, or things to just kind of like put in the back burner and let it just walk through the fire? Like what advice do you guys have for them?
I feel like there's a time and place for everything. So my advice to the younger version of me, I would say, come out when you're comfortable. Don't come out because you feel you have to, or don't come out because your friends are telling you to. Come out when you're comfortable. There'll be a time and a place. In addition to that, I think having that ongoing communication. I feel like the more you have conversations about the LGBT community, the more comfortable it becomes, not just for you, but for the other person. So, for example, like my dad, the more I talk to him about it, the more open he is. Now he introduced me to people, elders, as, oh, this is my third child. She's highly educated, but she's gay. And to me, I don't take offense to that because now I feel like he's acknowledging that I'm queer, and he's okay. And he's okay with telling other elders about it. Or if he hears that another elder has a queer child, he'll be like, it's okay. My daughter's like that too. And she's still the same. So for me, I feel like having that ongoing conversation makes people comfortable about it. It's like when a person passes away, right? You put their pictures away. Every time you see their picture, you'll cry. But if you have it out in the open all the time, you pass it, eventually as time goes by, you get comfortable, you don't cry. You look at the picture and you're like, oh, I miss them, right? But it's like that. Having that open conversation keeps it going and makes people comfortable. So I would say, take your time. You have your whole entire lifetime to figure out who you are, come out when you're ready, and then keep talking about it.
Momo, any advice?
I would say remember to always be honest to yourself and to love yourself, right? I think in the Hmong community, we have a lot of expectations that are put on us from a very young age. If you're a woman, you're supposed to be married to this type of person. If you're a man, you have to get this type of job to provide for your family, to do these things. And if you don't really sit there and think about what's going to bring you happiness, who you want to be, where you see yourself, I think we can get lost in that, and I think it causes a lot of unhappiness in our lives. So I think it's loving yourself, being honest with yourself, and being confident and knowing who you are.
Sita, how about yourself?
I would have to say, if you were going to do something, do it on your terms. Never, ever do it for someone else. You cannot find happiness in someone else. You need to reserve yourself, step away, look at yourself in the mirror and stare at yourself just to see if you like what you see. Ask yourself questions. It's perfectly okay. I talk to myself all the time. I cuss at myself and stuff, and then people think I'm bipolar or multiple personality. But sometimes when you talk to yourself, you're reassuring yourself that you're doing the right thing, and that's what you want. Always just go at your terms, change on your terms, do anything on your terms at your pace that you're comfortable with. Um, look for support. There's always support out there. If you're unsure about something, do some research because there's a lot of things out there, and just look for support. That's all I got.
Yeah, on that same breath, you know, when it comes to support, it is tried and true, at least in my experience. Do not underestimate the power and love of chosen family members. That's all I can say. And it could start anywhere from like, well, now that we're all still in quarantine, right? A lot of online communities that people could tap into to explore, to dip in and dip out, just to see like if this online community is a community you want to be a part of. But chosen family, at least if in my experience in my life right now, is such an anchor for me, especially while I'm still coming out to my family member. The only person left to come out to is my dad, but then I just found out last week he always knew. So, but I wouldn't have garnered that type of confidence though without my chosen family already loving me, supporting me, cheering me on.
Any last words, guys? Do you guys want to share? No. So I do have one question I'm trying to make out of it from a viewer. It's probably from a cis individual saying that we are scared of what we don't know. How do you reassure people that your sexuality is not a threat to anyone? Maybe in the sense of like killing off the lineage, you know, or so whatever, how you guys make it out, like the question. I mean, I know that there's no threat, but I'm just, I'm just okay. So to answer that, don't be afraid. They breathe, they smile, they look, they see, and they smell, and they cook Hmong food or buy Hmong food. They're exactly like you, so there's no threat at all because they're living their life truthfully to them, and that should not affect you unless you're part of their life that you know you want to get involved. So to answer that question, okay. So thank you guys so much for my panel, for being part of this amazing panelist, and to kind of open the eyes to the Hmong community, especially the Southeast Asian community, that you know that there's people in the LGBTQ community and here to support. So thanks, you guys. Thanks, Joanne, Lucida, Momo, and Lisa.
Thanks for having us.
So much.
you.
Thanks, Doua. I
Thank you.
appreciate it.